Oh yeah, you told me what macaroni in a pot means.
That was my interpretation.
I like this interpretation because I was like, what the fuck is macaroni? I understand everything else in the song except the macaroni in the pot. So until you said that, I was like, that is so true. It does sound nice and gushy and wet.
Fishy.
Hello, welcome everyone. This is Connecting the Dots, and I am your host, Ignacio Rivera. I am here today with.
Trina Greene Brown, and I'm the founder of Parenting for Liberation. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here with me. Today, we are going to be doing a different piece of media. We usually do like movies and documentaries. I'm really excited to be examining a song today, and that song is. Can you say it?
It is Wet Ass Pussy by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was so happy that you chose this because I asked Trina. I was like, "What would you want to talk about?" And so let us know why'd you pick this media.
A friend of mine had also asked me to be on a conversation about it like a while when it first came out, and so I had done
Mm-hmm.
like a little IG conversation with her about it. Um, but we didn't really necessarily talk about it from like a from a parent perspective, or how do we talk to our
Mm,
kids about this stuff. So I was like, oh, that is a good frame. I also
yes.
know that you'll have some juicy stuff to talk about. Pun intended, pun intended. That's the
Yes.
title. um and what was the other reason? I mean, I like the song. I dance to it. I sing
Oh.
it. It's definitely like a '90s throwback to when I used to listen to like Uncle Luke and Two Live Crew and
Oh my
Lil
God,
Kim
Two
and all
Live
the
Crew. Yes,
that
yes.
was like a whole thing. And I didn't know what we was talking about as a kid, but I definitely was singing, dancing to all them songs, pop that pussy, all that stuff, all of
Oh
the things.
yes.
I was like,
Yeah.
this is we back.
Yes, I when it first came out, I was like, "Oh, I love this song." I was like, "Yes," and the first thing I thought of was like, "I know people are gonna say some stuff about it, right?"
Right.
And also thinking about, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I used to sing tons of songs that I had no idea what the hell they were talking about, and just singing it like nothing, And so,
And
um,
doing all the dances.
Oh, oh yeah, grinding and all that stuff, right? So it's curious to wonder if like younger kids are singing the song not understanding what it is, and then others singing the song wondering or having an idea, and of course, the rest knowing exactly what they're talking about, and some getting very upset about it.
Right.
What have you heard about the song?
I've just heard little things. I'm in California, and so some of our legislators had like tweeted about it and had like added Cardi, like basically like this is setting women back, and this is
Mm,
like those super religious like we got some Republican folks here in Cali as well, and they
mm-hmm.
were just really like we need like trying to sign petitions to like get this. It was just a lot for some
Wow.
politicians to really be involved in. Um, yeah, so that was some of the controversy, and then not recently, but after it came out, on New Year's or something, Cardi was playing it live, like she was
Mm.
live streaming, and then her baby came into the room, and she was like, oh, and she like stopped playing the song, so everybody was like, wait, your baby can't listen to the song, but you want our kids to listen to the song? That's hypocrisy. And so there was like all this drama, and she was like, no, I don't want my, I think her baby's like two or something. She's like, I don't want my
Right.
2 or 3 year old listening to it. Like, it's not age appropriate. It's a
Mm-hmm.
song for adults. Like, she's like, y'all are parents. You could choose if you let your kid to listen to the song. That's your
Exactly.
choice. And I was like, it definitely isn't in line with her, the way that she talks about like autonomy. Like, you could choose what you want to do. It's your body, it's your
Mm-hmm.
family, it's your kids. Listen to it if you want. Don't listen to it if you don't. Like,
Mm-hmm.
be in choice about it. So
But
I
there's
appreciate
something interesting about that, because people want to put some sort of responsibility on someone else, right? It's like, oh, you don't want your kid to listen to it, but you want our kids to listen to it, like this total responsibility on her. Then, you're right. We have choice, but also within that choice, we also know that kids have access to media. So in that instance, understanding that kids have access to media and lyrics and all of that stuff, then the where does the responsibility lie? Does it lie on the parent to make sure that or any adult really that makes sure that if they have any questions or misunderstand the song, or to delve deeper into that song, whether like having, whether even if it's a debate, I think that's healthy, but just
Healthy debate.
talking about it, right,
Yes.
would be better than, like you say, like they try to ban the song. Why? Does it
Why?
cause harm to anyone?
No.
It doesn't incite violence, it doesn't cause harm.
It's
And
not hate
so,
speech.
yeah, so let's break it down, right?
Let's break
So
it on
the
down.
song is Wet Ass Pussy. And I have to say, I was saying wet ass pussy, 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 pussy. And I was thinking about, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Boomerang with Eartha Kitt and Eddie Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a scene where Grace Jones, oh that goddess, when Grace
Mm-hmm.
Jones is trying to hit on Eddie Murphy, and she is so forward. They're in a restaurant. She literally opens up her legs and her dress, no underwear, and she is like showing him her pussy, and she's just like pussy, 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 saying basically,
Yes.
how can you pass up this pussy? And then
Right.
I just kept on thinking about Grace Jones, and I was like, that if seeing that movie back then, that forwardness of like, I want you. Look at this beautiful
There's a,
pussy. Don't you want it?
yes. I love that. There's a scene in that movie that I think it's Eartha Kitt when I feel like I thought that's the scene you're talking about when she's like, I think she's like, Marcus, I have no panties on. So there's several scenes in that movie where it's like, get a bucket at the mop for this wet ass pussy. Like they're
I
like,
love
it's
that.
right here. I have no panties on. Is that the same movie, right? That's the scene
Yes,
I'm thinking
yes,
about.
yes. So
Yeah.
wet ass pussy, the word pussy, and even wet. I want to break that down. When I hear wet
Yeah.
pussy, I know my own like connection to the word wet when it comes to pussy. I remember, like, growing up listening to people talk about wetness as this disgusting thing. Like, it was so slimy and nasty. And I think that was where a lot of like, talks about, pussy being fishy and smelly and all these negativities around pussies. And I've had conversations with lots of my friends who are identified cis women, and friends who are, vagina or pussy owning people, and uh, have told me stories about shame and almost like really wanting to like wipe themselves and not show their wetness because it meant something. It was
Mm,
attached to some negativity. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
What was
no.
your experience with
With
like
wet
yeah.
or with pussy? I don't have I do okay, I will say like vaginal discharge was definitely something that was negative, right? I
Hmm.
don't know if we ever talked about it as wet, but it was like anything about it leaking, whether it's bleeding or
Right.
they're like, if there's something in your underwear,
Right.
like that's a
Right.
bad thing, right? And it was like, well, what could it ever release anything that's good? Like nothing good ever came from the vagina, right?
A
It was like,
baby. A baby.
and even that sometimes might depends on how old you are and if you're in a
Yes. Yeah.
relationship and all the things, right? Like
Yes.
there's sometimes that even that there's some judgment about
Yeah. Yeah.
who should and shouldn't have babies. There's all kind of judgment, but yeah, definitely like most things that came out, any discussion, and there were not many, to be honest,
Hmm.
discussions around um vaginas
Yeah.
or pussies.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about like what is even the language that I was told or taught
Right.
about it. Like I don't even know those words growing
Hmm.
up. We had a whole nother word for it
So
in
what
my
was
house.
your word growing up?
Our word was cootie cat.
Oh yes, I heard that one before.
Okay,
Cootie
okay,
cat.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a whole
Yeah.
cootie cat, and it was like I literally thought that that was what it was, and so I think I
Hmm.
was like late elementary. Um, when I was talking to friends about it or cousins about it, and they like called me out, start cracking up, like, "What? Did you just call it a cootie cat?" And they're like, "Are you talking about your?" Either they said your pussy or your coochie, and I was like, "Oh, is that what we're supposed to say?" And then I was like, oh, I've heard those words, but in rap songs, you know?
Right,
And I'm
right.
like, okay. I definitely was like, oh, I'm like definitely not on the right, I'm not saying the right language. I'm not
Hmm.
in enough. I definitely felt like damn, my mama just played me, got me calling it a cootie cat at like 12 or 11.
Well, I when I was growing up, I we used to call it something completely different. And so it was a Spanish word, and the word actually means little tiny tree frog. It's a coqui. It's like the symbol of Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Coqui. It's like a tiny little tree frog. And so my mother would call it a coqui. She said, have you washed your coqui? Go wash your coqui. And this, so I was like coqui. Everything was coqui, thinking that. And then I heard my aunt call it a chocha at one time. So that's more of a vulgar kind of way to say, I don't think it's vulgar at all. And maybe it's equivalent to cunt, maybe, or even pussy, I think, actually, pussy, chocha.
Maybe
Um, so those are the words that I
chocha.
grew up with.
But
Chocha.
what does it translate? What does chocha translate to?
I think chocha translates to pussy, I think, if not
Oh,
if
okay,
not
okay, okay.
cunt, I think.
I'm
Yeah.
like, it's not something like a frog. Like, it's not
No,
another object that
no,
you're
no.
calling.
As a
Okay.
kid, it was like this little cute frog thing, but I didn't even
And I
know
guess mine was a little cat. I didn't even think about
that.
that it was a cat. I just,
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. And then now I'm thinking about this progression of what I've named my nether regions, and this interesting,
yeah. What does it mean?
loving this song, right? Because for a long time, as a cis woman and as a lesbian and queer, I referred to it as, my pussy and vagina. And then when I came out as trans, I almost felt the need to call it something else because it was about this invisibility of my transness. And so I did not want them to call it a pussy or vagina. So I started calling it a hole, which got a lot of people upset. I loved it. I think it was nasty and I loved it. It's a hole. I
You
like
like, I love it.
that.
Oh.
So it works for me. It doesn't
It
have to work
works
for
for
you.
you. It has to work for you.
Yeah. And so I used that for a really, really long time. And then now it's interesting. I'm in a place where I kind of use both interchangeably, depending on how I feel or who I'm with. And I've really like reclaimed pussy and vagina back again. And I love it. I've reclaimed it because I've never not loved it. To me, as a trans fluid person, my experience is that I love my pussy. I really do. I love the pleasure it gives me, and I love everything about it. So I'm glad that I've gotten to the place where I feel comfortable enough in my identity and in my own
Mm.
desire and body to say, yeah, sometimes it's a hole, sometimes it's a pussy. Hey, it might even be a cunt sometimes. I don't know. Depends on how I feel.
But you get to choose what you call it,
Right,
right? And that's
exactly.
the beauty of it. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And it got me thinking, like, what do I call? I'm like, I just call it a vagina. I call her a vagina. But I was like, oh, I think I'm like, does she need a name? Is she free? But I definitely have been in this process of, over the last, I would say like 10 years. It's been definitely a journey of just like reclaiming my sexuality and like my sensuality and like
Hmm.
accessing pleasure, and like it's okay to talk about it, it's okay to touch it, it's mine, all of those
Yeah,
things, because it was a cootie cat, it was a thing that was
yeah.
on my body but didn't necessarily, like, it didn't have a role.
Mm,
It
yes.
there was not really there was not conversations about it as much as we talked about how my hair looked, or
Hmm.
were my legs shaved, or yeah, there's all these things
Yes.
that we focus on our body, right? Or at least, like, parents encourage us to talk about, when we get training bras, our boobs, all those things, we talk
Yeah.
about all these other parts of our bodies,
Yeah.
and my vagina was not one. So I don't know if I've ever really, just been like, let's talk about her. Let's sit down. Let's get a mirror. Let's check her out. All of
Mm.
those things
Yes. Yes.
definitely came to me later, as I began to liberate myself a little bit more about it all.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so true. Like, yeah, when you said that, like, my vagina didn't have a purpose or a story, and it's so true. It's like it really was just a function of peeing. That's it. You
And
use this
bleeding.
to pee, and then later on in life, yes, you bleed, and then you have babies, but you never even actually talk about the part that how you get to the part of having babies.
How
So
do you get the
that's the
baby?
function of the vagina, the you know, and it's just so interesting because yeah, I didn't have any real connection to my parts for a while, especially as a child sexual abuse survivor. That I didn't have connection to that for years later, years
Yeah.
and years later. Um, so yeah, this how we begin our relationship with our body and our pussies is so fucking important because the piece, I mean, I think a huge piece that's always missing from the conversation is just the fucking beauty of the pussy. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, the pussy is just a beautiful fucking thing. I mean, and that
Magical.
the clitoris, the only reason it exists is for pleasure.
I know. And we
If
don't
we
even get into that.
Right. And if we have the privilege of having a clitoris and being able to use it, you know, it is purely pleasure. And I don't think people actually talk to children who have innies or vaginas or pussies about the pure pleasure of it. And
No.
kids masturbate all the time because it feels so good, and that's when we say, "Stop! Don't do that." Sometimes we have some parents that say, "Okay, that's a private thing. You can go to your room and do that and talk to them further," which is great. But yeah, this relationship with our pussies, and I think fast forward to this song, "Wet Ass Pussy." Of course, there's a lot of shit that pops up because our own stuff, and then generational differences, right? You know, I'm sure
Yeah.
different generations are talking about this in very, very different ways. Like, I would never say pussy, and that's very understandable in that time. And as we progress and we think about, um, you know, sex education and all the things that we've been tackling to learn in this world, um, language changes, right? Language
Yeah, it
changes, and
does.
it's subjective. It's subjective. Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely. And I would just wanted to connect with you as also a survivor of child sexual
Hmm.
abuse, and that is also why there was no conversation about it. And
Right.
that was actually the first. That was the first conversation about my vagina was because I
Mm.
had been abused, and that's why I was like, I don't even have language other than it's a cootie cat, right?
Mm.
And so there was a lot of trauma associated with my vagina, and then also a lot of secretiveness. So
Oh
like
yes.
you don't talk about it. It
Hmm.
happened. It was a bad thing, but you don't bring it up. And so yeah, this journey of like reclaiming it and finding pleasure and like, oh my goodness, the clit and like, oh, clitoral stimulation. And I can ask for that. And I need you
Mm.
to do this, right? Like being able to, as the song is saying, like be
Yeah.
directive about what I want, what I like. And that is empowering, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
not anything other than that. So
Yes.
I
Absolutely. You know, if we're thinking about this in comparison to, you know, male songs, cis male songs about women, and how
mm,
women are just totally portrayed in a lot of media. I mean, all over, women are sluts and whores and this and that. And so in the song, it starts off, "There's some hoes in this house, there's some hoes," and it keeps on and it ends that way. And so I'm sure people are like, so why is whore in here? Like, what is empowering about calling yourself a whore? Right. And I think there's a lot of empowerment. I identify as a whore. I identify as a slut. Not only because I have a history in sex work, but also because for me, it is empowering to tap into the desires that I have and be as, you know, sensual, as primal as I want to be, say anything I want to say and hear whatever I want to hear back to me, as long as I have it's intentional and I got my boundaries and negotiate it.
so
You know, like, for me, it feels like these are spaces I can tap into. I love that identity because I think the view of women, femmes, sometimes even people who are bottoms, who always tend to, you know, people think are always women and femmes, um, don't get to express, or we sometimes navigate our bodies to fit whatever somebody else wants because that's what we were taught as socialized as
mm,
girls or as femmes, right? and and so to me, saying, you know, I'm a whore, I can tap into all the entire spectrum of that. I can tap into my whorishness. I can tap into being shy and all that. It doesn't define the totality of me, right? So to me, it's like they are having fun with desire, with fucking, with sex, and that it doesn't make these women fucked up. And actually, you can't even say anything about it because they've already said there's some holes in this house. There's what can you say about them, right? It's like they've already established. I know. Thank you.
They've already accepted it. They're like, we know what you're gonna say, so we just gonna claim that, and we gonna
Yeah.
say like, yes, we are in this house. I hear you. I hear you like powerfully like reclaiming or claiming things that can seem like negative, right? Um, like those are words that I would not want somebody to call me in a way that was critical or like a negative way. And like you're talking about the power of reclaiming things. And it's so funny because of my upbringing and like being raised in the church, like I
Hmm.
have some very rigid and limited ways that I've engaged in my own sensuality and sexuality. And like theoretically, I'm like, yes, I want to be super free and liberated. So I'm
Right.
I used to tell my sister, I was like, I just want to be a hoe.
Yes.
My sister's like, no, you don't. And I'm all like, yes, I do. But then it's like, what is holding me back? That has been the journey. This is what
Hmm.
therapy is for. Like, it's like I want to be more free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's like I have to like reparent myself to be like,
Mm.
it is okay to explore that. It's okay to not like that. It is
Hmm.
okay to try that.
Yeah.
Without
Yeah.
judging myself. Because like, who is there to judge me? There's nobody. It's all in my own head, right?
Yeah.
Just some of the things that have been ingrained in me, right? Some
Hmm.
of the ways that patriarchy has been ingrained in me, the way that
Yeah.
I've swallowed the pill. And so I
Yeah.
literally have like I'm laughing at myself because I can hear the conversation where I'm just like, but I just want a hoe. It's just like, and my sister's like, what does that even mean? And I'm all like, oh yeah, let's break that down. Like,
Yes.
what does that mean, right? And
Hmm.
I think I associate like being able to explore and to try things out and to
Hmm.
have like the song talks about, like have options, like
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
things, see what you like, see what you don't like, try it out. And with different partners or with the same partner or whatever, like that there's like no limits, right? And that
Hmm.
doesn't make me a bad
Right.
woman or nasty or whatever the narratives that I would have had from my upbringing. And it's just been an interesting journey to be
Mm.
like, I don't know if I've ever qualified as that. I don't know if I've ever gotten to the level of horror or whatever. But but I do feel like a lot more like free to be like, I could try that,
But like even when you think about the word whore, like if people think whore, sex worker, prostitute, or loose woman, right? When I think about these, category of people, to me, saying I'm a whore really exemplifies the skill that whores have to negotiate what the fuck they want and how to get it right. It's a knowing, it's a knowing of how this works and how to speak on how you can get this done right. And so I think that there's a lot to be learned from people who it as a lifestyle to consistently intentionally talk about sex and what's about to happen and what's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to say, I'm a whore, yeah, I am thinking about sex really well, and I am negotiating that shit, and I'm getting the shit that I want, and I'm happy about it. So if that's what that
Whew.
means, then I'm a whore.
Well, dang, if that's what that means, I think I need to, I think that's really important because there's a way that, prostitution, whore, hoes, it I appreciate the way that you're talking about it from a place of power, right? Like I
Hmm.
have power, I have decision making power, I can get what I want. It's very like, yeah, it's very empowered. Whereas a lot of times it's seen as something like, oh, someone who's doing this and that's not their choice. oftentimes it's
Hmm.
framed in that way, or the person that you are engaging with has the power and decision making about what they
Right.
offer and what you receive and things of that nature. So I
Hmm.
really do think it's important for us to, even as we talk about the song and we talk about the sense of like empowerment, that it takes us, I feel like it's a strategy around preventing um assault potentially, right? Like
Mm,
when we have like a sense of this, we have a sense of empowerment, not like we're going in here, we're not talking, we're just kind of going to go
right.
see what the other person wants. It just shifts the power dynamic.
Yeah, it does. And you know, thinking also like thinking about the empowerment side, yes, right. Um, and there's also the other side that we don't live in a vacuum, and that depending on who you are, how old you are, where you live, if you decide to use a word like whore, that can cause a lot of trouble for you, right? So this is
True.
also about, I have a privilege here. I'm on video saying I identify as a whore, right? That's a huge privilege. Not everybody can do that, and try to navigate that openly, right? A lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is very private, and not a lot of information, right? So, thinking about those opposite ends, and then also thinking about like this song in the context of how, not only how girls and young girls are seeing it, but boys as well, right? This is also because I think everybody's concentrating on women or girls. Oh, this is too much, right? But this is also a great opportunity to even discuss about how boys might be interpreting or processing the song, right? Because it can be like, oh, this is what girls want, this is what all girls want, so I want to do
Right.
this thing, right? And so we always have to remind our children that, again, this is one subject here, this is one person's idea that might resonate with many, but it's only one of a large spectrum of ways that we can express ourselves sexually. So yes, some women may want that, but you won't know it until you negotiate with them and talk it out and see, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so it's not even downing or putting a negative spin on what they want. It's like, okay, some people want some things, you may not want it, you may not agree with it, but if you do, it's not about yucking anybody's yum. It is about,
Mm-hmm.
is that something I would want to do, and maybe I'm curious about it, so how do I get there, right? That's more of the conversation. That's more about language skills, negotiation skills, self-esteem, processing information, what is intent and agency. All of these things are more important than the actual thing that they're talking about in the song. Like these
So true.
wonderful sexy sex acts and stuff. Yeah, that's good. And this is like, I almost see this as a song of people talking about fantasy. It might be reality, but it's like two homegirls talking like, yes, I need somebody to be in this wet ass pussy, I want a big ass guy, I want this, I want that, and they're talking about it like two homegirls just shooting the shit, and how people talk when they're in private conversation, right? I
Yeah.
almost see it as that. So I almost see it as like, here's a lot of different ways to talk about. These are two homegirls talking about fantasy and what they like. Is it about empowerment? Is it about degrading women? And here's so many wonderful conversations here. Um, and I often say that the best way to talk to kids is never to come with your own opinion. I say, ask questions, let them come to their own opinion first, and then start asking questions about how they came to that opinion, because that's how they learn how to process their own information. If you tell them this song is horrible, or if you say this is the most empowering song for women, they love you, they respect you, right? So they might say, my mom said that this is the most empowering song for women. Why is that? Do they understand what that means, right? And then when it comes to the boys, like, are we talking about how we negotiate, how we talk about consent, um, that this could all be fun? Is it something you like? Is it? There's so many ways
Yeah.
to tackle this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Hmm.
Especially, I have a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old. And I think I really appreciate the piece around talking to boys about these conversations, right? Like these songs are, It's written by, is saying, I don't know who wrote the lyrics, but it's performed and it's discussed by two women, two black women. And and as we think about it, like we've talked a lot about, like, what does this mean for folks who identify as women or folks who have vaginas, and how this is it could be an empowering and a liberating conversation about the wetness of our pussies. But then also, how do we have this conversation about what does this mean for our boys or for men? Because these women are describing what they want and how they like it and what they expect in return for it, and how can that be a conversation that is one of consent, right? Like if women, or if Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B are saying, this is what I want, this is what I want in return, here's what I'm offering, like how can that actually be a conversation that is negotiated? And how can someone say, oh, I'm down, I can offer this in return, or oh, I don't like this, or I don't do it this way. Like how can it actually be a conversation? And I think that's really important because, like I said, I was raised in a boy. I actually tried to talk to my son about the song, and I was just like, oh, do you know what the song means? Do you know what it's about? And then I said a little bit, and he was like, okay. And then he just was like, like, not having this conversation with you on this car ride on the way home. I'm like, okay. Well, I was like, well, when you want to talk about it, like, I'm here to talk about it. But that gets me to this other conversation that I've been having with him as he enters into tween age land around consent. And so we had a conversation a while ago about, talking about consent and things of that nature, and seeking consent and making sure that we're honoring other people's boundaries. And I realized, as a mom who, as a child sexual abuse survivor, as someone who's worked in gender-based violence work, like I've often talked to him as a boy from a place of, to be honest and accountable, I've talked to him mostly from a place of like making sure that he respects other people's boundaries, making sure that he seeks consent so that he's not potentially a harm doer or perpetrator, because that is the way the gender binary is talked about in that movement around gender-based violence. It's like male is perpetrator and female is victim, right? So I'm in that narrative, in that binary, having these conversations. And now that he is, getting of age and, cell phones, text messages, I like you, do you like me? Do you want to be my boyfriend? I'm learning that I didn't talk to him about how does he set his own boundaries, and how does he know how does he give consent or not give consent? Because his answers are like, sure, cool. If that's what you like, all right. He's like, if you like me, cool. And finds himself in these relationships that then he's like, well, when they realize that I don't want to be in it, I think he's like, they'll get over me and they'll move on. And I'm all like, if you didn't want to be in the relationship, you could have just said no.
Right.
And so he's so concerned about hurting people's feelings. And I was like, oh, I was so focused on him not taking advantage of other people, or, not in, crossing any boundaries, that I didn't teach him how to set up his own boundaries. So help me.
This is thank you for saying this, because this is so important, because this right here is like a piece of why how patriarchy and sexism does hurt boys as well. And this binary, right? Because like you said, boys are set as the perpetrators, and although right now they are a higher number, right? That doesn't take away the fact that boys are perpetrated against, and that women are perpetrators. My perpetrator, my harm doer, was a woman. So it happens, and it's just less reported. And so it is a disservice, because exactly what you said, we concentrate on boys not being harm doers, but we have to realize that boys are harmed too. Little cis boys and trans kids are being harmed just as much. With girls, people that are socialized to be girls, sometimes you're taught to tap into your feelings a lot more, right? And to talk about these things. And so I think we miss the boat a lot with boys on that. Really tapping into those feelings as well, because that's really about that introspective work, and really thinking about our own selves and like, what do I want? And that's a hard thing. I think this is a process for our entire lives, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I want, it's
Same.
Just like, it's always a process. But yes, that's such a disservice. And so in this instance, I would say that it's never too late to talk about this, and I think maybe start talking to your son about friendships first. Stay away from the relationship stuff, because friendships are relationships and people tend to forget that. And
Definitely.
so your friendship, so I always say your relationship in your family of origin is the very first relationship you ever learn anything about, right? And then your second is your friends. And so um, maybe start having conversations with him about what he likes about particular friends, what he wishes he had more of, what he wishes he had less of. Those conversations right there really start forming like maybe a framework of what it is he likes to engage with, right? And then you can start doing exercises around asking for what you want, very being very clear and intentional. So having some intentional like exercises, like even if he's asking for anything in the house as ordinary, maybe asking him to ask it a different way. If teaching, and this is about teaching him how to change his mind, how to say no, how to so it really is about the more communication factor and being very comfortable in speaking and questioning. Oh, that's so important. The questioning aspect. I think it's. I always say, talk to your kids about tapping into that sixth sense, that little voice, your consciousness that tells you stuff, and sometimes you don't listen to it. Like, I think that we always have to talk to our kids to listen to that voice, because that voice helps us to question. And when there's a question, then, write that question down. Ask mom, ask somebody, I think this is a great opportunity to start naming particular people in his life that are adults that he could talk to that's outside of you.
Yeah.
Because one thing I learned is like, at one point my kid wanted to talk to me about everything, and then at another point I was like, what's going on, and I just called up friends and be like, here are people that you can access, and the rules are they don't have to tell me anything about what you talked about, unless someone is harming you, or
Mm,
or you are in harm's way. Other than that, there's an agreement. They don't have to tell me anything. You have complete confidentiality with them. But I've already talked to those people and told them my views and my concerns and all that. So you basically have a team of people helping with this process,
yeah.
and it could even be as simple as, hey hun, let's take a trip. Right, we can't do this now, right, because we're in quarantine, but let's take a trip. Great. Where would you like to go? Like, literally just keep asking him questions so
Yeah.
that he can come to answers, and then ask him why he's coming to those answers, and then ask about what can be the positive and the negatives of these things, right? So it's like teaching the kids how to see a really, really big picture,
Yeah.
and how all of that is connected to this one moment. And that's the way I try to talk to my daughter. It's like, there's a moment right here, but there's so many things that go into that one little moment,
That one decision
you
or
know?
that one sure.
Yeah.
It's more than just that moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really good stuff. I think it's really
No.
important, and it definitely resonates with some of the things that I've been doing with him in terms of like tapping into his feelings and what does he think and what does he want, and asking him a lot of questions. He probably would not appreciate you telling me to ask him more questions. He's like,
Oh,
Did you send her to me to ask me more questions?"
well, I'm gonna give you two tips, and I think I even gave these tips way back when and stuff. But I love these
You're like,
tips
they
because
still
they work.
resonate.
They really work. One is this, like for instance, this song. If your kids don't want to talk directly to you about a song, I always say, have a friend over, get on the phone, listen to the song, and talk about it loudly in front of your kid. They will be listening. So they're
Yes.
getting all of the information, but not directly to them. Really
Yeah.
having a conversation about, wow, this song, there's people that are, tripping about this song, but I think it's empowering, and other people think this. So you're talking about the both sides, so you're
Yeah.
not really telling your child to, this is what you need to believe. The other thing is like, I am a huge fan of using, again, media. This is why Connected Dots exists. Huge fan of, if you could think of movies or anything, I mean, any show or any movie has dynamics between two people, even young people. I mean, it is to me. I used to just ask, "Oh, look, and what do you think about their relationship and how they're, behaving and holding hands?" And I just ask so many questions to
Yeah.
be like, "No, I wouldn't do that. I don't like that," or, "Oh, that's so cool. I want to have a boyfriend." And so we just go from there. And
Yeah.
sometimes she didn't answer, and I didn't even push it. I just left it, and then again, I got it to a place where it was so nonchalant. Like it wasn't like, "Can we talk about sex?" It was more like,
That's not gonna work.
this is just us chilling and talking, like, or reacting to something and being like, "What do you think?" "Oh, I think that's." And so to me, I started forming I mean, a relationship about conversation, really, not a top down approach, but like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm also learning about these things too. This is wild. We're all learning about it. So, we can learn together." I always took that approach. We can learn together.
Yeah.
Let's go get a book. Let's go do this. Or, well, who's your favorite character? What's your favorite couple? Why? So many ways to
I love
approach
it.
it, because then they're just forming their own ideas. It's like, "Yeah, I don't like that couple because," or, "I would like a girlfriend or boyfriend like this." Yes. And what kind of couples are you showing? Only heterosexual, gay, like, are you expanding, this
Yeah,
idea?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, media has been really helpful. I've definitely used that. Yeah, I guess like I forget that I'm a communications major. So I've used music and media and storytelling all the time to make those connections. And that has been some of the ways that we've had some really rich conversations.
Mm,
Just things that he watches, even the video games that he plays and the
yes.
characters and um yeah, and like one show that was really good, just even to talk about emotions and how you feel and how like relationships and communicating was Steve in the Universe or Steven.
Oh, yes. Yes. So cute.
He loved that show, and so I got into the show, and then I'm like, oh, this is a good show. It talks about like big emotions and feelings, and
Mm-hmm.
like what happens when you don't communicate how you really feel, and
Exactly.
when you're withholding, or and like choices and relationships, and how do you like
Mm-hmm.
have friends but have boundaries. It's been
Yes.
some really
Yes.
good conversations, and he definitely has come to me, and we like just last night, we weren't talking about dating relationships, we were talking about a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, "Oh yeah, this one friend just follows me around and they're kind of annoying." I'm like, "Well, what do you say to them?
Right.
What do you tell them?" And the way that he tries to, deflect them is like utilizing comedy. And I'm like, "Well, sometimes they just think you're joking."
Right. Right.
I was like, "What if you have to actually just say it?" And
Mm-hmm.
like, I really want some space right now. Or
Yeah.
can you give me whatever? Because he'll be like, "Oh, don't you want to go play with those friends?" He tries to hint at the kid to go play
Yeah.
with someone else. And I'm all like, they don't get your hints.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta, like supporting him to cultivate his voice.
Yeah. That's so important, because that voice is the voice that helps to prevent, like, to help be a piece of preventing CSA, sexual violence, when young people have a voice to be comfortable enough to say, "No, thank you. I'm not interested. Don't want to play today," because that is
Like
so
no is the
difficult.
full answer. And it
Yeah.
doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you're
Mm,
mean. It won't hurt their feelings. I'm like, it might hurt their feelings more to know that you said yes and you really didn't want to be in a
yeah.
relationship with them,
Hmm.
that they think you like them and you really don't like them that way. Then they find out later, like,
Yes.
so it's just been an interesting like growing journey with him. And just supporting him to cultivate his voice. And what does he think? What does he like? What does he want?
Yes. Yes.
I've never really, I'm still an adult trying to figure that out. And I'm sure it's a long journey because we evolve and we
Hmm.
grow. But how do we cultivate that sense of like trusting our gut, trusting our own knowing, trusting
Hmm.
that sixth sense or that intuition? Um, yeah, like cultivating his ability to hear himself.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it takes you, a community, and trial and error, unfortunately, right? Because that's how we all learn, right?
Yes,
That's
we
how we
do.
all learn. But it's like, yeah, I actually, in terms of, this song, I appreciate. Well, I appreciated the song coming out. I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate that people have the option of making a song like this, and that people have the option of listening to it. But I also think that people have that you should take this opportunity to, whether you're going to watch it, you wanted to watch it or not, I would take the opportunity to listen to it and get to know what your children are listening to or have the possibility of listening to, especially with such an extremely, like, famous song right now,
Yes.
and so so some of the things that I wrote down for teachable moments, we talked about a lot of them throughout, but like, one thing I want to say is that everyone has a unique experience, right? So this song, it's about two grown ass women, and I want to point out two black women. Okay, we didn't even talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
the sexual pleasure of, like,
Black
black and brown
women.
women.
Yes. Yes.
Like, yeah, we don't hear about that enough. So yeah, black and brown women, talk about your wet ass pussy. Talk about this,
Thank
right?
you.
So, but this is their experience and their creative expression of it, right? We
Yeah.
have artists that, chisel naked bodies, paint naked things, right? And they are talking about passion, desire, sex, and all that. Everyone should have the right to express, right? They are expressing, again, desire and passion. They're not expressing anything harmful. At some point in the song, they express things around, you'll pay my bills, you'll do this and you'll do that. And we can have a whole conversation about choice there. But in the song, they're actually saying it, right? They're saying, this is what I want. This is what we can
Yes.
negotiate, right? We could agree or disagree with that. Doesn't matter, because to us, what we said before is the conversation of, like, how do you even have the conversation, right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Um, and, keeping children away from language they'll eventually hear is a disservice. So talking
Yeah.
about it is important. This is a great opportunity to talk about how the vagina, pussy, vulva, any functions, you
The
know.
clit.
Yeah, the clit, how it functions, self pleasure, exploration, all of that. And talking about the difference between fantasy, reality, talking about desire, intent, and action, what action we take, right? Again, these
Mm-hmm.
are consistent conversations at every stage of life until you cross over. But I'm really happy that we got an opportunity to talk about, our own experiences with this, but also about how we can talk to young people about this and not be scared, like this
Don't be scared.
total fear. Don't fear the pussy.
Don't fear the pussy. It's wet and gushy.
Yes, it is. It's so good. Oh, and just a little asterisk note there. Not everybody has a
Not
wet
every.
pussy, and don't have no shame on that. Some of us, when we
Exactly.
go through menopause, it dries out a little bit. You got to use lube, and lube is your friend. Lube is
Lube
a
will
wonderful thing.
prevent you have a wet ass pussy by any means necessary. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the
Um,
asterisk mark. Everyone's not the same.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, Trina, thank you so much. This was a
Thank
great,
you.
great, great conversation.
I've
And
enjoyed
this
myself.
conversation will be visually and audibly here at Connecting the Dots, but we are also sharing this as a podcast on Parenting for Liberation as
Yes.
well. We did that the first time around, and I love collaborating with you. So thank you so much.
Thank
And I'm
you.
sure everyone will see you again somewhere else here with me.
Somewhere soon with you. Yes, because I enjoyed being with you as well. Thanks for inviting me in. Thanks for connecting the dots because it's so important that we could continue to, like, we had a conversation years ago, but like you said, it's a lifelong conversation and
Hmm.
journey for us to really, even as adults, to continue to like build our own skill set and capacity around these conversations that are hard, sometimes hard, but
Yeah,
we have to get into them. We have
yeah,
to. Yeah. So thank you
absolutely.
for connecting those dots and also
Yeah.
connecting it to media because that was fun.
Yes, yes. All right, now, so we'll see y'all next time. Thank you so much. Right.
Bye.
Bye.